Hey everybody, hope everybody is having a fantastic Tuesday. We are kind of getting ready here for more rain. Surprise, surprise, surprise. But with this rain and with the temperatures starting to warm up a bit, I thought it would be fun to talk about why vines cry. So we see lots of pictures of this now on Instagram and everything. People are showing those pretty little pictures of the vines after they've been pruned with that little drip of water in it, and I thought it would be kind of cool idea to break this down and explain why this is going on. So before we can get into that, we got to do a little bit of biology, a little bit of botany, and talk about plant anatomy. So I think the best way to think about sap, which is what you're actually seeing when that vine cries, is to kind of equate it to our blood, right? So we have arteries and we have veins. Well, a plant has phloem and xylem. So if you think about the phloem as being more like our arteries, where it is the nice oxygen-rich blood, and that oxygen-rich blood is leaving those lungs and it's going, or leaving the heart and going everywhere to bring that oxygen, bring those nutrients to the body. And then we have the veins that return the oxygen deficient blood to the heart, to the lungs, to get oxygenated and then pumped back out everywhere. Well, the xylem is mostly water with very little trace elements of nutrients, and that's going to flow in the opposite direction of the phloem. So the phloem goes from the leaves where the chlorophyll is, all of this, and it goes down and into the rest of the body of the plant that wants the nutrients. And then the xylem is the opposite. It's going from the roots up, back up to the leaves so that more energy can be made. So we have the phloem and the xylem. Now during the winter months, the sap, instead of hanging out in the vines, it starts to go down into the, roots, and it kind of stays there during the winter. And we can see that this happens. This is what dormancy is, right? We see it happening because the canes, if you bend them, right, they're brown, they start to crack, versus during the spring, during the summer, you can bend them and they're nice and pliable. So without the sap in them, without the nutrients in it, it goes down and they turn brown. But what happens is as the winter turns to spring, the weather warms up, the soil warms up, and so does the sap. So once the temperatures start to reach about 50 degrees on a regular basis, this is when the vines are like, all right, I can wake up and I can start working, right? So as the temperature warms up, now the roots begin to absorb the nutrients and the water from the soil, and it starts to push the xylem and the phloem up. Okay? And as it pushes the phloem, the sap up, what happens is the liquid finds its way to the ends where the cordons, the spurs were cut or pruned, and they go out, and that's the crying. Now, it's actually kind of cool because, or depending how you look at it, depending on the variety, depending on how much water there is in the soil, depending on when they were pruned, the plant can actually lose up to 4 liters of sap while it's crying. So the more wet the soil is, so maybe a season like this, we're going to see lots of crying, where in a drier season, we may not see as much crying. So after we prune, right, the vine develops this callus, and this callus is a gummy tissue that's filled with the salts. And when the water evaporates, the vines can begin to heal themselves. And this is where new wood is actually going to eventually grow over the old scar. And this is how the crying, or where the crying, will occur. So although it is a beautiful sight, I do want to warn that it may not be always the best thing to see this crying. Okay, because as the tears move up the vine and out the scar, it's also kind of you can think of it as its natural antifreeze. So I'm pushing these sugars up and they're going out as the water goes down. If it doesn't drip onto the ground as opposed to dripping onto the vine itself, if we have a spring frost, if the temperature drops again, now we have this liquid on the vine covering up what could be a future bud. And that's what's going to cause the vine itself to freeze and potentially die and lose off that potential bud. So the crying is pretty, but we need to make sure that as it's crying, as it was pruned, that the tears are going to fall onto the ground and not onto the vines to potentially harm it. So there you go. That is a very short explanation of why vines cry. I hope it was enjoyable, and I hope that maybe you learned something. And if you have any questions of why things happen in the wine world, please leave a comment and let me know. And before I leave, I've got to show that beautiful picture of a vine crying. So please hit that save button so that you can remember why vines cry. Maybe share it with somebody, tag somebody who might be interested in this. And I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will see you next week. Sláinte!